Enchantress decks are known for being strong but slow, incredibly powerful, but with only a handful of actually powerful finishers that bring the game to an end. Well, how about I introduce you to a new friend, which will speed up those games, eh? Eidolon of Astral Winds is a white vigilant 2/4 spirit enchantment creature with a constellation ability that gives any target creature base power and toughness 4/4 and flying until end of turn when it or another enchantment enters the battlefield. Need I say why populating your board with a horde of 4/4 flyers is very good? I mean, Enchantment deck's other favourite finisher, Sigil of the Empty Throne, demonstrates that very, very well. Oftentimes, a lot of decks can't just deal with a critical mass of large flyers. And yes, I know this isn't as good as Sigil. The creatures need to already be on field, and the effect only lasts until end of turn. But no matter how they're made, a horde of big flyers will just end games just the same. And nobody said you can't play both. Actually, there is one pretty relevant advantage that this thing has over Sigil beyond the fact that it's, 2 mana less. It triggers on ETB and not cast. This fact gives it a distinct niche compared to Sigil, in the kind of decks that like putting enchantments onto the field without casting them. The likes of your Yennas, Onyxias, Goshintais, and, if you're awful, OG Zers of the world. The fact that these decks now have access to an extra finisher, which pops off just from you playing through your game plan, is incredible. And yet it can also look very innocuous before it pops off. Who really wants to use their removal on the weird 2/4 that sometimes turns one thing into an angel for a turn? That'd be stupid. But then it gets to a later turn, and it turns everything into 4/4s. And bye-bye. That also leads me on to the next type of deck that appreciates this card, which is the decks that like their existing creatures being buffed. I'm thinking along the lines of the other fun Dom user. That deck already very much likes Sigil of the Empty Throne, but the Angels aren't enchantment creatures, and that very much does matter as they don't get the lifelink, death touch, or hexproof that Zur grants. Instead, with Eidolon, which itself is an enchantment creature and thus a recipient of the keyword soup, you're going to be flinging your existing board and their pile of oppressive abilities into the air for an even more terrifying swing. And in a similar vein, Aura decks can get some real work out of this thing as well, since buffing and giving your Voltron target flying is never exactly a bad idea, and if it already has everything Eidolon will grant it, I'm sure that Mesa Enchantress will enjoy cosplaying as an angel token for a turn. And finally, this leads me on to the suite of decks where I think this thing truly hits its stride. And I think that's with go-wide aura strategies, and in particular 3 decks which use aura tokens that trigger the Constellation ability constantly. These decks being Elevir, Gilwain, and 3-Dog. These 3 decks, which take advantage of both the upsides of Astral Winds, ETB, and affecting existing creatures over making new ones, go absolutely ham with this thing. Gilwain turns any creature entering into an Eidolon trigger to make a very easily terrifying board. Elevir's constant virtuous rolls every single combat turn those combats into a nightmare of giant flying bodies. And any given single 3-Dog trigger with Eidolon around turns all of your attackers bar 1 into flying 4/4s on top of any auras already on them. In these 3 decks especially, this card may as well read Win the Game. Astral Winds is wonderful in all of its neat little interactions and is surprisingly flexible in its applications within Enchantress decks. That 3-Dog interaction especially is what inspired me to speak about this card today. A card with an interaction that overwhelmingly powerful cannot just be left in the dirt with less than 700 decks to its name, and so I implore you, as I am doing with pretty much all of my Enchantress decks, at least try this out, and do not let this one fade into obscurity when the next set hits, as has happened with so many before it. Ciao.